They launched in the late 70s with little money and lots of ideas.
There were 4 guys at Atari who decided they wanted to start their own company and publish games that were independent of Atari.
Their success broke records.
Activision in 1983, when it went public, was the fastest growing company in the history of American business.
And some of their decisions backfired.
I can't figure out where they came up with that name or why they decided in 1988 to compete against Microsoft.
It just really did not work out for the company.
But a young video game executive was confident that the failing company had a future.
And everybody was asking me whether I was mad. You know, why was I going off and doing this?
While other game companies have struggled to survive, Activision has continued to dominate.
It was something that started gradually building but never subsided and just continued to build and build.
This is the story of a company that continues to lead us through the video game revolution. It's the compelling story of Activision. The story begins in 1979, when another company is making headlines.
I'd like an Atari 2600 system, please, and everything that goes with everything.
Warner Communications introduced the first Atari 2600, which was just an enormous success. I can't tell you how many tens of millions of machines they sold, but it was a lot. But it was a controlled licensing model. If you wanted to make games for the Atari 2600, you had to do it through Atari.
Atari vets Alan Miller, Bob Whitehead, Larry Kaplan, and David Crane have a plan.
There were 4 guys at Atari who decided they wanted to start their own company and publish games that were independent of Atari.
But Atari filed suit against the fledgling company, Activision, in May 1980, charging unfair competition and conspiracy to appropriate trade secrets. Undaunted, Activision begins shipping titles for the Atari 2600 just weeks later.
They built games like Pitfall and River Raid and Kaboom.
The red-hot game developers hit it big. By March 1981, revenues exceed $6 million.
Activision was the original independent third-party game publisher back in the early 80s. A lot of success on the Atari 2600.
In December, the lawsuit between the companies is settled. Activision becomes an official Atari licensee, and success continues.
The thing that made the company most successful at that time was that they had a very consistent track record and history of very high-quality product.
With 10 successful releases in a row, sales are predicted to reach $150 million by the end of 1982. The biggest challenge is keeping game cartridges in stock.
And Activision in 1983, when it went public, was the fastest growing company in the history of American business.
Zork, a groundbreaking text adventure game, is topping charts and being developed by a company that Atari will soon be very familiar with, Infocom. But are the successes of Atari and the entire video game industry too good to be true?
There was this perception that Atari was a fad. You know, people were comparing the 2600 to the Pet Rock and that it couldn't be duplicated, and probably a lot of your viewers wouldn't even know what a Pet Rock is. But you had a lot of companies that had emerged overnight after Activision's success.
By late 1983, Atari's sales of the 2600 and revenues of the entire video game industry slip into a tailspin, taking Activision along with it. Even though it has 5 of the top 20 video games, in November, Activision is rocked by massive layoffs. A still struggling Activision acquires game developer Infocom in 1987. A turnaround seems possible.
Infocom actually, in a lot of ways, was really the first true video game company. They had gotten started in the late 70s when computers, you know, like the Apple II were first coming into the market, or the TRS-80 from Radio Shack. It was before there was an IBM PC.
And Activision joins forces with international game giant Telecomsoft. Incredibly, the newly merged company abandons an all-too familiar name.
I think it was something in the water. For the life of me, I can't figure out where they came up with that name.
They changed their name to Mediagenic. They started to get into business application software along with video games.
And Mediagenic goes head-to-head with a computer giant.
I can't figure out why they decided in 1988 to compete against Microsoft. You know, that was, the decision was to go compete against Microsoft making word processors for the Macintosh. And they never fully abandoned the heritage of the company. Even though they changed the name, they were still making games under the Activision banner.
It just really did not work out for the company.
In spite of the turmoil, in 1989, the company publishes the first interactive product on CD-ROM, Manhole.
The CD-ROM had only been around for a couple of years, and it wasn't really a mass-market technology. And the guys who developed the Manhole went on actually for another company to create Myst.
Sales failed to match the game's glowing reviews. By the fall of 1990, the once mighty game giant seems doomed, as stock in the company drops to 50 cents per share. It will take a video game warrior to save the collapsing company.
Everybody was asking me whether I was mad. You know, why was I going off and doing this? And, you know, what was it that was attractive about Activision? Why would it be so crazy?
Robert Kotick, a young video game executive, takes on the daunting task.
He had the foresight to see that this was an area of tremendous expansion, and that by buying Activision, you did have a brand name that resonated with the traditional gamer. He didn't have to start something from scratch and build it up.
It was a little bit of a leap of faith, and I think it was also some great foresight on Bobby's part.
He knew what he wanted to do, and he followed that plan.
They lost the culture of quality. And when we came back to the business, the first thing we did was change the name back. And also eliminate all of these ancillary product lines. We stopped making word processors. We stopped making databases. We just focused on doing games really, really well. And the mantra, it's a little bit different today than it was 10 years ago, but the mantra has always been a small number of really great quality games done incredibly well.
But with a staff that has been devastated by layoffs, how will these games get made?
At that point in time, when we were a small company, it was very hard to go out there and recruit the best developers in the business at that time and say, hey, let's go with Activision. So we took a little bit of a different strategy.
There really wasn't a plentiful supply of development talent. This was a pretty new business. And so we felt that in order to keep the quality objectives that we set for ourselves, we had to do all of the development at our own company.
We took lots of very young, bright, talented people who may not have necessarily had a lot of gaming experience, but really were passionate gamers and wanted to make games for a living, and we brought them into Activision. We helped teach them how to make games.
We had to hire the programmers and the artists and the animators and manage them, because we really didn't have third parties that could provide that capability to our quality level. And it used to be 100% of our products had to come from our own internal studios.
The addition of Kotick helped bring Activision back to life and doing what they do best, creating games. But his next endeavor would be the riskiest of all, reinventing the wheel. Activision has given birth to revolutionary games and proven to be the reigning king of the video game industry. But this new thought of recycling old games for newer audiences may be the toughest obstacle yet.
When we first took over the company, we had a very small revenue base to take some of the old franchises like Zork and Pitfall and Shanghai and create new versions of those products for new hardware.
The first to receive the update is the Activision classic Shanghai. The new game, Shanghai 2 Dragon's Eye, is unveiled in May 1991 to glowing reviews and brisk sales.
Shanghai was a very important franchise for the company.
The game also helped establish Activision as a producer of games for many markets.
You know, it was one of the company's staples, and it was the kind of game that you could release on multiple platforms, that you could put into an arcade, and there was just a tremendous amount of interest, not just in America, but globally for Shanghai. So I think it also helped the company in markets like Japan in terms of establishing a presence for ourselves in Japan, because Shanghai was very popular there as well. And it just, it just really allowed the company to have this steady stream of revenue.
Shanghai is only the first step in Kodak's plan.
Bobby and his team recognized that there were a lot of assets in the Activision library that were just going to waste.
Properties like Pitfall, or River Raid, or Kaboom, or Zork that go back many, many years that really captured the hearts and minds of gamers. And what we thought is you have a combination of great intellectual property, incredible development technology, and
we had to take those treasures and make them into new great games.
And those memories are updated in thrilling and successful new versions of longtime Activision favorites, including Pitfall.
The original Pitfall, due to the graphical limitations of the early 80s, it was basically Pitfall Harry, a stick figure, going across a puddle, two-dimensional, on a vine, which was just a straight line. And now all of a sudden it's 10 years later, and you can just imagine what we can do to create waterfalls and crocodiles and lush environments to really bring Pitfall Harry and his adventures to life.
And Zork.
Zork, in many ways, is even more remarkable because it was a text adventure game. Nothing but text. And so, in certain ways, it's almost like taking a book and turning it into a movie. Being able to take the written word and turning it into a 3D action adventure game.
In 1992, the newly rechristened Activision relocates from Northern California, the home of many video game companies, to Los Angeles.
We ultimately opted to move the company to Southern California because we really did feel that ultimately we would be able to benefit from the Hollywood creative community.
And that creative product expands when 7 titles are released in late 1993 for the red-hot Super Nintendo Entertainment System. The offerings include updated favorites such as Shanghai 2 and an intriguing new robot combat game named Mech Warrior.
That was a mega hit that allowed us to take advantage of all the new 3D technology, and so it became a huge bundle item. And it was allowed to go into all these bundles with all the 3D cards and computers that were coming out at the time. And I think at that point we started to get more diversity in our games and started on our path to where we are today.
Brisk sales of Mech Warrior, updated classics, and new titles convinced Kodak that the future of Activision lies in a mix of the past favorites and brand new franchises. Yet the emerging company is at a crossroads.
We had the challenge of competing against other smaller $100 million companies like us for development talent, for marketing talent, for sales talent, for intellectual property rights, for technology talent. And our fear was that at much less than $500 million, we wouldn't be a big enough company that we could have predictable operating results.
In the mid-90s, when we were growing and always trying to get to the level we are today, is we always had one big hit that really kept the company moving forward.
So we went into sort of this mad dash mode to go from 100 million to 500 million in 3 or 4 years. Had we not done that, I'm not sure that we could have remained an independent company today.
In April 1995, Activision enters an agreement to develop titles for Sega Saturn, PlayStation, and Nintendo Ultra 64. Strategic alliances with third-party game developers also increase their success. Through an agreement with id, the blockbuster game Quake is created.
And once we were able to start working with id, I think other people said, wow, if id likes working with Activision, maybe we should start talking to Activision. I think our whole approach to the development community is to be a partner with the developers. And this is what we really said to id. Your success is our success.
What is Redemption PS2?
What it's really about is trying to make the consumers happy each time they buy an Activision title. Every proposed title must make it through a demanding approval process.
We have a very extensive greenlighting process where we look at the market potential. Is a genre growing or declining? How strong are the competitors?
It does a lot of things. It makes sure that the development is on schedule. It makes sure that we share this common vision. It allows us to identify any issues early on in the process so that we can correct them. And we make sure that we really hear what the entire world is saying about our games.
Those making it through the greenlight committees undergo incredible in-house testing of games.
And then testing our games all along the way with consumers. Are they interested? Are gamers interested in the concept? Are they interested in the idea and the gameplay? And then importantly, as the game evolves, do they think it's fun? Do they understand what the objectives are? Is it easy to play? Is it intuitive to play? Is it something they want to continue playing?
New versions of MechWarrior, Quake, and Pitfall titles continue the winning streak in the 1990s. Yet all the testing in the world can't guarantee success. The much-anticipated release, Spycraft, the great game, had a thrilling espionage plot.
And we wanted to make it as realistic as possible. The CIA is a hard place to duplicate without having some inside information, so we figured we'll go to a former CIA director.
And it boasted the latest in technology.
It was a time where people expected the CD-ROM could, in many cases, replace video game systems as the primary place that people would play games. And that ultimately turned out not to be the case.
Spycraft was a lot of fun. We definitely learned a lot about what you want to do right and what you could do wrong.
Spycraft misses with fans, but Activision has no time to grieve. They're busy signing Bruce Willis to a multi-million-dollar deal to star in Activision's Apocalypse. But the internally developed game is beset by production problems.
You know, again, it was another excellent learning experience for Activision to learn about what it means to work with a big celebrity who has very particular ideas about how he should be portrayed in a video game. To make sure it was right and to make sure we captured the essence of Bruce Willis was not very easy.
I'll see you in hell.
And luckily for us, we found Neversoft, who came along and made that game for us when we were having some other problems with it.
The much-anticipated game premieres on PlayStation, but falls short in more ways than one.
We've had games that we've had higher expectations for, and then as the game has been, in the course of being developed, we've perhaps reduced our expectations because we find that consumers aren't as interested in it, or the gameplay didn't come along as much as we'd expected.
But the budding relationship between Activision and Neversoft would lead to one of the most profitable franchises in video game history. By 1996, Activision has grown from a small California game developer into an international video game giant.
There's only one other company that has, like we do, in excess of $700 million of revenues, and that's Electronic Arts. And that's probably the reason why you see both of us as competitors, the two most consistent operators and the two most consistent in operating results of all the publishers.
In 1999, Activision acquires Neversoft, a company that leads them toward a brand name that will make them millions.
I think everybody was surprised about how successful it was. We all knew it was going to be successful, but the magnitude, it is one of the top-selling franchises ever.
We didn't think that we would hit it so right on the first try. To get the highest-rated video game in the history of the PlayStation on your first try in a new category was a surprise.
As we did concept testing, we found out that skateboarding is not about racing, it's about tricks. And so that is what started us on the track of making Tony Hawk's Pro Skater, the first one, and subsequently all of them, about tricks.
I guess we really captured the entire action sports lifestyle elements and put them all together in a product with the right developer in Neversoft, the right athlete in Tony Hawk, and the right type of music, the right type of environments into something that turned into a really special game and franchise.
From the very beginning, Activision knew Tony Hawk would be bigger than life.
When we presented E3 and you get the excitement from the industry and from retailers, it was something that started gradually building but never subsided and just continued to build and build.
In June 2000, Activision releases hits such as Dark Reign 2, Vampire: The Masquerade Redemption, and Chicken Run Fun Pack. But it's their agreement with legend Matt Condor Hoffman that has fans really psyched.
We actually knew it was going to be a great game. The gameplay behind BMX is a lot of fun. At this point, it's the #5 PlayStation game since it's been released, so we're very happy with its success.
Incoming torpedo.
And the hits keep coming. Activision releases Star Trek Invasion in September 2000, the first game that fans feel truly captures the magic of Star Trek.
What we've been able to do with the Star Trek license is to essentially return it to two things. Both true to the brand, so that it's not outside the realm of what people believe Star Trek is and should be, and importantly, to improve the game quality.
One of the things about Invasion is that it was a console game. Most of the Star Trek games are PC games. I think console games are a little bit quicker, a little more action-oriented.
By late 2000, Pro Skater 2 is #1 on the U.S. retail charts.
Sure. Well, I mean, Tony Hawk has had all the attention because really, I mean, we've launched Tony Hawk 3 different versions now across multiple platforms, but we're in the process of launching all of our action sports. They're under an umbrella brand called
Activision O2.
And it's our extreme sports brand.
Other extremely popular athletes soon joined the Activision O2 bandwagon, like Sean Murray and Kelly Slater.
Kelly Slater's pro surfer. Kelly Slater is probably the most recognized name in surfing, and we'll be launching a game with Kelly Slater this summer. Sean Murray on wakeboarding will also be coming out. Wakeboarding's less known than a lot of the sports, but it's a lot of fun.
Now that we have the scoop on the athletes, what's the scoop on the consoles?
As a third-party publisher, Activision hopes all the first parties succeed because the more hardware that's out there, the more software will sell. So we're excited to see someone with the strength of Microsoft and the resources of Microsoft enter this industry. PlayStation 2 has still sold more game units this holiday season than anybody else has, so they're certainly a factor that no one can forget about. Sony has established a wonderful franchise in PlayStation, and the PS2 is a great machine and has arguably some of the best games, certainly the most games out there right now.
Activision is one of the most highly regarded game companies in the world. They've created video games that have changed the industry and managed to prevail over every circumstance. And they have no plans of slowing down.
We just know we have to take it to the next level.
What do we got?
But it's no harder to do that in the future than it was in the past. You're always trying to push the envelope of game playing. You're trying to have the latest and greatest visual technology and sound technology. And at the same time, you want to be innovative and fresh and give something new to people because they don't want to play the same thing over and over again. All right, I gotta go back to work. Not easy, but a lot of fun.
Well, actually, the industry is poised right now to take off and grow significantly over the next couple of years with the introduction of the new hardware. And we have several things sort of up our sleeves. We've got expansion of our current franchises led by action sports. Where we'll be launching titles in all of our action sports franchises in the upcoming year.
Today, being over $700 million in revenues, we have the luxury of enough product flow, enough of a revenue base, enough of diversity of businesses that we can afford today to look at every one of our products individually and say, these products need to be the highest rated products in the market. And we won't put a product out into the marketplace unless we feel that it will accomplish that objective.
You're going to have to stay tuned for some of the things that we've got cooking here.